Mike, have you ever read the Flying In by Chesterton?
No. What is that?
Me either. But this is a poem from it, apparently.
You will find me drinking.
It's called The Logical Vegetarian.
Like a sailor in a slum. You will find me drinking beer like a Bavarian. You will find me drinking gin.
I wanted to get a girl that sounded like she's a vegetarian.
I am a rigid vegetarian.
So
this is what
vegetarians sound like in your head?
And I tried to
I was trying to find
and I tried to hail the constable.
I told it I wanted like a coffee house vegetarian.
But he said
But I took a Chesterton poem and I just could tell by the poem it's like a drinking song. It's actually pretty catchy. Anyway,
I like it.
It's catchy, right?
No, I really like it actually. It's very different.
He said the guys knows how to hook, so little anti-Semitism for you there.
I like how in the beginning you said you referenced it that you drink like a Bavarian, and we just recently read a Chesterton essay about the German beer garden attitude.
All right, let's jump in.
Nice.
To another episode of Chesterton.
No, start at the beginning. All right, we'll do this again, are we?
You're listening to another episode of Chesterton's Gateway with Ethan, Nicolle, and Michael Grumbine, and me, A.I. Chesterton. This poem is from The Flying In, a satirical romp I wrote in which I inveigh against the forces of dreary, oppressive modernity. In short.
All right.
Let's begin then.
No, I'm having trouble here.
Chesterton gets getting really intense.
Eager, yeah. All right. He's heading. All right, here we are, diving into the second part of the Maniac. And if you like that poem, read The Flying In, apparently. I found it. Seemed fun.
I'll check it out. And poetry's not my fate, but the lyrics seem pretty good from what I can tell.
He likes to put fun rhyme schemes on his poems, so it kind of makes for interesting songs. It's kind of a thing. Every third or fourth song, I like to try throwing a Chesterton poem into music. All right. Well, I'm just going to hit play, and we're going to continue on with this chapter. Ready to go?
Let's do it. We're in the middle of the Maniac.
Yes, we're in the Maniac, and now he kind of set up that we're starting in the madhouse. Anyway, no one's going to listen to this without listening to the one before. So let's go.
Let us begin then with the madhouse. From this evil and fantastic inn, let us set forth on our intellectual journey. Now, if we are to glance at the philosophy of sanity, the first thing to do in the matter is to blot out one big and common mistake. There is a notion adrift everywhere that imagination, especially mystical imagination, is dangerous to man's mental balance. Poets are commonly spoken of as psychologically unreliable, and generally there is a vague association between wreathing laurels in your hair and sticking straws in it. Facts and history utterly contradict this view. Most of the very great poets have been not only sane, but extremely business-like. And if Shakespeare ever really held horses, it was because he was much the safest man to hold them. Imagination does not breed insanity. Exactly what does breed insanity is reason. Poets do not go mad, but chess players do. Mathematicians go mad, and cashiers, but creative artists very seldom. I am not, as will be seen, in any sense attacking logic. I only say that this danger does lie in logic, not in imagination. Artistic paternity is as wholesome as physical paternity. Moreover, it is worthy of remark that when a poet really was morbid, it was commonly because he had some weak spot of rationality on his brain. Poe, for instance, really was morbid, not because he was poetical, but because he was specially analytical. Even chess was too poetical for him. He disliked chess because it was full of knights and castles like a poem. He avowedly preferred the black discs of drafts because They were more like the mere black dots on a diagram.
Yeah, drafts are a game. Checkers is a form of them. There are other forms of them, but
okay.
Yeah, it is a game. Now, this is a very important paragraph because here he's making the case that's sort of contrary to what at least I used to hold.
Right.
An idea, kind of cultural
and it's also
idea.
like,
I didn't hold it.
Like, it'll throw you off. He'll do these things where he makes a generalization that you've never heard of, and you're also like, how can you make such a generalization? And you got to really think about it. Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so this generalization that it's logic and over-rationalism that leads you down to a dark path, dangerous to man's mental balance, as he says, then that is and not artistic, or a poetical frame of mind or imaginative frame of mind.
Yeah,
it's
getting
kind of
lost in your imagination.
At least from our American perspective, and even which we
modernist,
got from the British, very practical perspective. So he's but he's going to stick with this, and I know what he means. I know what he means, because when you get addicted to the idea of logic and the kind of effect of gravity that it starts to have, where you want to conclude more and more and more and more, you want to pile on the syllogisms and get more weight behind what you're saying, it drives you into a very unimaginative and a very sometimes imbalanced place. And we've all met these people at parties where you go to a party and they only want to talk about one thing, and they're very knowledgeable and detailed in that one thing that they want to talk about, but they just won't let it go. And it's not that they're being overly imaginative; they're being overly logical. They're being driven to analyze things down to the point where they're almost mad. And I agree with him about Poe. If you read Edgar Allan Poe, he has some of his most famous poems are about one small thing and all the details of one small thing, like the man that gets trapped, like the telltale heart. It's a extremely narrow story. That's about essentially guilt and a sound, and that's it. And he dwells on that the whole, or the one where the man gets bricked into his cellar and killed that way, and it's extremely detailed about the building of a brick wall with a man behind it, and but it's overly myopic, it's overly analytic. It's not the imagination of a man that writes fairy stories. It's the imagination of a man that is focused on one horrible thing and wants to write in depth about one horrible thing. And so yeah, I agree with him about Poe. Although I like Poe, but it is a kind of morbidity, a kind of unhealthy.
He's saying though, because Poe
obsession.
Did Poe commit suicide? I can't remember how he ended.
I don't think he committed suicide. I could be wrong. That's a good question. I actually
or died because like Hemingway killed. I'm just trying to go guys that
Poe was extremely unbalanced though in his life. Like he went bounced all over the country. He had a lot of affairs and had a lot of depression and was unreliable in a variety of ways. He was a weird guy, but not because his imagination was too wild. It was because his imagination was too morbid, like Chesterton says. So I agree with Chesterton on this one.
Oh, it was a mysterious death.
Oh, is that what it's saying? Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. That's a rabbit trail. Someone
look
can
it
leave
up,
a comment.
Listeners.
Yeah,
look up the death of Poe.
And I wasn't actually the end of the. One thing I wanted to add on though, because the one thing that helps me understand this analogy about imagination not leading you to go insane is when I had kids, and also making Axe Cop, realizing that we all start out very imaginative. It's a survival instinct that we have. The only way we can enter this world is to have this open, imaginative. We don't have a logic. We don't have a vocabulary of words to use. We don't have rules. That we don't know a system of rules yet that we're stuck to. So you watch your kids. I remember my daughter making words up and just deciding this word means this. she didn't yet know how crazy it is to do that. So like she just did it. And like just some of the crazy things you see your kids do just to process the world, the funny pictures they draw, the funny things they say, the questions they ask. It's not just that they're confused, they don't know. They use their imagination in order to survive, in order to like make it through that first chunk of their life. And I think it's the people that Chesterton, even when Christ says be a child, it's people that can hold on to that and not lose it as they get older, to realize that there actually is a part of surviving, a part of like really growing up in this world and being a human in this world that is all imagination, or it's at least it's like being in touch with that the unknown, I guess is a better way to put it. But being able to have that to know that anything is possible and to not be so. I think that's where he goes with Fairyland. Fairyland is this idea. We'll get there. That's a whole other chapter, but that's the world the kid lives in. You know, the kid lives in this world where anything is possible. Remember, my dad used to tell me that the paper plant that was near us was the cloud factory, because you'd always see these giant white clouds coming out of it. So I actually thought as a kid that the cloud factory is located in our town and it makes all the clouds for the whole world. That's amazing.
That's fantastic.
But it is being able to live in a world where maybe that could be true. Like, there's enough crazy things in this world that's like he says the rhinoceros looks like it doesn't exist. There are things that, you know, that are wonderful and amazing and crazy, and more than we even realize, because our whole life is built to not find things fascinating or have any wonder towards things. And I think that's my rant on that.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. It is a part of the natural order of things, this imaginative work. And it's rather the over focus on, I mean, I'm a big fan of logic and reason, but it's the over focus on logic and reason with regard to a single topics that creates this imbalance that Chesterton's arguing against.
Yeah. So you think of an artist that lost his mind, generally you're going to find one who went narrow. They didn't have that wonder.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. And actually he's about to bring up exactly that. A famous English artist.
Oh yeah, he is. Yes. Okay. Yep. Okay, let's go.
Perhaps the strongest case of all is this, that only one great English poet went mad, Cowper. And he was definitely driven mad by logic, by the ugly and alien logic of predestination. Poetry was not the disease, but the medicine. Poetry partly kept him in health. He could sometimes forget the red and thirsty hell to which his hideous necessitarianism dragged him among the wide waters and the white flat lilies of the Ouse. He was damned by John Calvin. He was almost saved by John Gilpin. Everywhere we see that men do not go mad by dreaming. Critics are much madder than poets. Homer is complete and calm enough. It is his critics who tear him into extravagant tatters. Shakespeare is quite himself. It is only some of his critics who have discovered that he was somebody else. And though St. John the Evangelist saw many strange monsters in his vision, he saw no creature so wild as one of his own commentators. The general fact is simple. Poetry is sane because it floats easily in an infinite sea. Reason seeks to cross the infinite sea and so make it finite. The result is mental exhaustion, like the physical exhaustion of Mr. Holbein. To accept everything is an exercise, to understand everything a strain. The poet only desires exaltation and expansion, a world to stretch himself in. The poet only asks to get his head into the heavens. It is the logician who seeks to get the heavens into his head. And it is his head that splits.
Add sound effect.
It's a great line.
So great. And that's it.
Well, I guess it's technically 3 lines, yeah.
Like, I think it is that moment. Like, you start as a kid, and the idea of fitting the heavens into your head is ridiculous. You're just taking it in, you know? And there comes this point where we think we've got to figure it out. And then we go, oh, no one's thinking about this one thing. And you go down this track of whatever philosophy, way of thinking. And you start thinking you can figure it all out. You can stick it all, you know, get it all in your head. I think that's what he's getting at. So William Cowper,
Yeah,
you want to give us a little?
Sure.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I was going to make a comment about that end there. So
yeah, please.
But I'll save that for the end. So the Cowper, the guy that went mad, that Chesterton's talking about there, was a guy that we actually get a lot of. Like there's some stuff, like he was friends with Newton, John Newton, who gave us the Amazing Grace hymn, and he was one that coined the phrase God moves in mysterious ways. So he's a hymn writer, and he's a very devout man, and he's living in the 1700s. So think of him as a contemporary of like the founders of the American Republic, which is basically like if you see portraits of him, that's what he looks like. Okay. But he's writing all these hymns, and he becomes more and more obsessed, which does happen from time to time in certain branches of Christian faith, usually called Calvinistic. He became more and more obsessed with whether or not he was himself going to be saved. It was the lack of knowledge about his own salvation that kind of drove him over the edge, and he suffered a series of mental breakdowns in his life, and had some recoveries, but basically had a very tortured end of his life because of this inability to grapple, with the idea that he might be one of the damned. He doesn't have any. He doesn't really know if he's saved or not, because he doesn't know whether he's one of the elect. He just kind of hopes. And so that's the general background for him. So he was a beautiful songwriter, beautiful hymn writer. I love some of his hymns, but he was. I don't have the whole bio here, but from the footnote that I had written, it said at the end of it, it said he recovered, because it said that after a dream in 1773, he believed that he was doomed to eternal damnation. Then he recovered and wrote more religious hymns. And then, because Chesterton made that comment about how John Calvin damned him and then John Gilpin saved him. So looking at who John Gilpin is, this is actually a character in one of Cowper's comic ballads. It's actually a character he came up with. The diverting history of John Gilpin, shewing how he went farther than he intended and came safe home again. Written in 1782. So I thought it was interesting because this story came after that dream, and it sounds like it's something about him finding his way back. So there's some happy ending there to his life, or did it get better? Well, yeah, Chesterton says it almost saved him. Almost saved him. Okay. Yeah. So he it looks like basically his wife, the death of his wife, kind of finished him off. Like he was kind of coming out of it by turning to comedy, essentially, and by using wit. And that's why, hence Chesterton's reference to John Gilpin in his own in Cowper's own writing. But William Cowper, when his wife, Mary Unwin, went down, he never recovered. So no, I don't think I figured this out when I was trying to footnote this book. Do you know who Mr. Holbein is? A little bit. I know a little bit about Holbein. So this is Holbein. Yeah, Hans Holbein is his name. And he was. This is a little bit of my bailiwick. He was end of the medieval era portrait painter, and the reason I know him is because he painted the most famous portrait of Thomas More, the famous English chancellor that defied Henry V, because Henry V wanted him to let go of his Catholicism and say that it was completely all right for Henry VIII. Did I say Henry V? I meant Henry VIII. For Henry VIII to remarry, and More wouldn't do it. But he was known to be like the most just man in England. He was called by detractors and friends alike. He was an impressive man. Eventually, he was beheaded by Henry VIII because he couldn't. Henry VIII couldn't stand it. But Holbein was the portrait painter of the age, and he became so famous with his portrait paintings that you could pop up a picture of his Thomas More portrait when you produce this, because it's a pretty cool one. Very impressive. This is 1500s, and the style of the quality of painting is fantastic. But he basically worked himself to exhaustion and near death. And that's why Chesterton's referencing that because he became so famous. He just went around Europe painting everybody, basically, or lots of people, from the French court and to the Austrian courts to the English courts, and he was much in demand and basically worked himself nearly to death. So that's a little bit I know about him.
The only thing I know is, I don't know if you go to Scotland and order coffee, they go, ground or Holbein? Sorry, that's stupid. All right.
Oh, what a great joke! See, there's that levity.
Really?
I'm quite confident you will never end up in Hanwell.
You're too generous. I tried to tell groaning joke, make you groan. All right, here we go.
It is a small matter, but not irrelevant, that this striking mistake is commonly supported by a striking misquotation. We have all heard people cite the celebrated line of Dryden as, "Great genius is to madness near allied." But Dryden did not say that great genius was to madness near allied. Dryden was a great genius himself and knew better. It would have been hard to find a man more romantic than he, or more sensible. What Dryden said was this: great wits are oft to madness near allied, and that is true. It is the pure promptitude of the intellect that is in peril of a breakdown. Also, people might remember of what sort of man Dryden was talking. He wasn't talking of any unworldly visionary like Vaughan or George Herbert. He was talking of a cynical man of the world, a skeptic, a diplomatist, a great practical politician. Such men are indeed to madness near allied. Their incessant calculation of their own brains and other people's brains is a dangerous trade. It is always perilous to the mind to reckon up the mind. A flippant person has asked why we say, as mad as a hatter. A more flippant person might answer that a hatter is mad because he has to measure the human head.
I thought it was like mercury or something.
It is. It's mercury poisoning. That's why hatters are mad. But leave it to Chesterton to bring it into a joke.
All right, there's some definite name drops in there, so definitely got to give us some background on Dryden.
Okay, so this is John Dryden. He's the first poet laureate in England. He lives in the 1600s, dies in the year 1700, and so he's basically called he's a poet from the 17th century that basically he's seen as kind of the more poetic, almost sort of poetical son to Shakespeare. He's carrying on the great English tradition of poetry. He's known, he's admired by everybody. The guy basically had almost no enemies. He was this weird figure who was beloved everywhere, and basically, he was the 17th century version of Chad from our internet memes nowadays. Like, he's the guy that everybody loved, and he was very wise too. Like, he wasn't just a poet, but he actually had a great prudence, and people came to him for all kinds of with all kinds of problems, and relied on his judgment. And so he was quite the figure. One of those interesting guys who almost nobody knows about nowadays, but he was a staple of it'd be like saying Shakespeare to somebody and having them not know who Shakespeare was. But for whatever reason, people stopped. Like, nobody post World War I and World War II seems to know who John Dryden was. But anyway,
Now,
so he was.
Chesterton here says that, who is he referring to when he wrote this? And then he obviously thinks everybody knows who he was referring to, so he doesn't even say. Do you know who he was referring to? Right? Doesn't he say that?
So, yeah. So
people might remember of what. I don't know.
I don't.
Of what sort of man Dryden was talking. In that.
Yeah. So because Dryden was often consulted on matters of state, like people. It was one of the only times that I know of that where a poet was people brought a poet on to be like advisor to the king and things, which is an odd position. So he had to deal with this court, and so what he's pointing out is it's the great practical politicians, as Chesterton says, that are the ones where their wits, the great wits that they have, are off to madness near allied. So it's not it's not genius the way people translate it now. It's this attitude of practicality that he's talking about.
Wits.
Genius.
I'm understanding the actual meaning of wits. Like I struggle with what was really meant, especially by an English person when they say wits.
Okay,
that's the difference here.
Wits have to do with facts. So the word witness, for example, comes from you rely upon witnesses to tell you just the facts. So it's a person that's eminently concerned with the practical facts of what happened, and they have that practical English sense where they're gonna stick to what they can see and what they know, and they're just gonna sort of drill in and make the right decision from a very practical basis. Whereas genius, genius is often eccentric. It's often wild. It's often it often shoots above So wit is this kind of witness, not wit in the sense of cleverness. Although
that's right. I always thought of witness as witty, being witty.
Yeah, well, it does have a so a witty person can see the practical connection between things, and so they make jokes about it. So that's a slightly different take on it. So wits in this sense just means like a real strong, grounded, practical intellect that makes decisions in a sort of no nonsense fashion. So he's. Yeah, that's right. Like House. Almost no imagination. Just about the facts. Just about being super practical and rigorous and sticking to logic as their tool. Genius is different. We think of people like the wild-haired scientists.
Right.
They make leaps. Like if you're Newton, if you're Einstein, you make leaps that other people can't see. If you're Da Vinci, you make jumps.
Because a genius,
you don't just like.
The genius sees a thing out there that no one else sees. Like we're all looking at like a big old wall of noise.
They have vision.
Like we're looking at the magic wall where like if you blur your vision, you can see something, but no one else can see it but them. So they go the extra mile to get to it. They do crazy things, step out of the normal bounds of society.
And they are not limited. And often geniuses don't have great wits in the sense that Dryden was speaking in the 17th century. They're not very practical people usually. Their intellect is so high. So that's why Chesterton's criticizing. What's this?
Geniuses, instead of people that have great wits.
Yeah. These are geniuses. So Chesterton is criticizing people who misquote Dryden because he's saying he said wits, not genius. So it's not madness is not aligned to great genius, like Dryden. Chesterton says Dryden was a great genius himself and knew better, which is true. So he's talking about sort of the more mundane, common, practical, hard-nosed decision making that Dryden was up against when he was in the political sphere.
Gotcha.
And so you'll end up with people going to war over really hard-nosed, practical, realpolitik sort of analyses, and that is not the mark of a genius. That's the mark of a pedantic intelligence that might be able to logically go one step after another, but they can't get out of their channel. They're not geniuses. So
just because he mentioned them, he quickly mentioned people who are not great wit examples. There aren't examples of what Dryden was mentioning. He says Vaughan or George Herbert. You have like a peanut shell version of peanut shell bio for each of those two?
Unfortunately, I do not. Though I missed that line and I failed. I failed in my one. I have one job. I failed in my one job on those.
I wonder if I have my. I probably noted them in my book. They're probably in my book if I have it. Oh no, wait, no, I didn't. Oh yeah, because I put this chapter in my book. I'm not able to find it though. So I wish I could remember my own footnotes. But yeah, I forgot who Herbert and Vaughan are, but apparently they were geniuses at the time. Visionaries.
So George Herbert was a poet like Dryden, not as impressive as Dryden, and he was in the same century as Dryden. But I don't know much about his particular genius. I don't, except that he wrote poetry, but I've never read any poetry by Herbert.
Okay,
so I can't comment.
Poety kind of guys. All right, let's continue. This is
probably artistic geniuses is what is what he's talking about.
We got a broken up paragraph here. If it'll work.
And if great reasoners are often maniacal, it is equally true that maniacs are commonly great reasoners. When I was engaged in a controversy with the Clarion on the matter of free will, that able writer, Mr. R.B. Suthers, said that free will was lunacy because it meant causeless actions, and the actions of a lunatic would be causeless. I do not dwell here upon the disastrous lapse in determinist logic. Obviously, if any actions, even a lunatic's, can be causeless, determinism is done for. If the chain of causation can be broken for a madman, it can be broken for a man. But my purpose is to point out something more practical. It was natural, perhaps, that a modern Marxian socialist should not know anything about free will. But it was certainly remarkable that a modern Marxian socialist should not know anything about lunatics. Mr. Suthers evidently did not know anything about lunatics. The last thing that can be said of a lunatic is that his actions are causeless. If any human acts may loosely be called causeless, they are the minor acts of a healthy man, whistling as he walks, slashing the grass with a stick, kicking his heels, or rubbing his hands. It is the happy man who does the useless things. The sick man is not strong enough to be idle. It is exactly such careless and causeless actions that the madman could never understand. For the madman, like the determinist, generally sees too much cause in everything.
Like the dig at determinism there.
Right, and which is one of those things. I mean, he's just had a knockdown, drag out with a determinist who was a socialist. So R.B. Suthers was...
R.B. Suthers?
Yeah, he's a journalist.
The founder of Arby's?
Don't think so. This would be... That's hard.
Arby's.
Man, I love your jokes, but that's because I'm a lame dad.
We're dads. Yeah, you're corny.
Yeah, we like the lame jokes. So this is not Arby's in that sense. This is Robert Bentley Suthers.
Okay.
So the Bentley, he was not actually a part of the Bentley family that produced the famous car.
Sad
but
for him.
Yeah, sad. But he is what we do know about him is that he was a journalist whose son died in 1918 in World War I. So we're talking 10 years after this book was written. So he's a journalist. So he's like he's a competitor to Chesterton, essentially. He's journalists in those days got in like debates with each other over their weekly columns. So they would go back and forth in their weekly columns, sparring with each other in a way that journalists nowadays don't usually do. And so they were kind of, and people kind of watched it like reality TV, like we watch reality TV. It's like, this is
be like
fun
a
to
slow
watch
motion, like a slow motion flame war on Twitter.
Very slow motion reality TV. But that was a time when people found things like a debate on free will very interesting. He became even more of a socialist after his son died, because he attributed his son's death to essentially to the money grubbing capitalist state of England. And so he was very disaffected. Anyway, at the time of this writing, his son hadn't died. World War I hadn't started. So, but he's clearly, obviously, a Marxist, and so Chesterton's going after him for that. I really like what he's saying there, because he talks about this sentence like, if any human acts may loosely be called causeless, they are minor acts, the minor acts of a healthy man. And the whistling as he walks, slashing the grass with a stick, kicking his heels, rubbing his hands. It is the happy man who does the useless things. The sick man is not strong enough to be idle. And, it's just, it's a wonderful set of examples about a man with a sense of wonder, and also with that leisure and idleness, which is the mark of a man who's not locked into a wrong-headed way of thinking, but who sort of enjoys the world, not just fights with the world or argues or does, but has this sense of enjoyment. So I love it. And he's pointing
Which goes
out
back to the childlike, like the imagination of a child and the way they can just get lost, and they have the security of knowing mom and dad got things taken care of. And I think that's to see an adult that has that sense about God, that they have a happy-go-lucky thing about them.
Exactly. And if you meet people, I have some family members who suffer from extended family that suffer from mental disorders. And when you meet someone who is mentally handicapped in some way, they can become, they'll look at a child like swinging a stick in the grass and chopping some long grass down, and they'll try to read into it. Like, what's the, some deeper cause? And like, how about we just let them play? How about that? How about we not have to come up with something, dire or of supreme importance that shows that the child is really wise in some way or something like, no, just, sometimes the acts that we do are a kind of causeless act. We don't have to ascribe a deep and usually dark cause to everything.
Right.
And he points out that both the mad and the determinist materialist have something very much in common in that regard, where they have to talk about what the cause was of everything, because that's all they believe in, is a series of cascading sort of materialist causes. If you're the materialist, and all you believe in, if you're a lunatic, is your own lunacy. You believe in your own broken view of the world as the thing that everything revolves around. So everything has to be connected to it. And it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. And I think, just to be clear, which probably very few people would get this confused, but we're talking about going mad, lunacy, not a damaged brain, either from an injury or, I think you can kind of go crazy from that, but like born with, like when I think of like some of the, I don't even know like what the right term is. You're totally not supposed to say retarded, but when I was growing up, like that was like just the term, but like they're very happy childlike people with that condition, and they retain their childlike sense of things to a lot of extent, in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of Down syndrome. I don't know if that's what you're thinking of, but
Down syndrome, my aunt, and similar.
I wasn't talking about her in my previous statement, but my aunt, Dorothy, was Down syndrome, died when she was a teenager, but so I never really knew her, but I heard stories about her, and her life and death was the cause for my grandparents on my mother's side to spend much of their life caring for Down syndrome, and what they call, like you said, they just called them retarded. Retarded was a technical term. It just meant the brain was inhibited, the mind was inhibited in some way that wasn't into the fullness of human development, and so it wasn't a slur. It was just a statement of fact.
It's like
in music, you call it.
In music, you say retard. when the music slows down, it's called retarding.
That's right.
It's a real term. Yeah.
You're slowing it down. And but Down syndrome folks, because I've known a lot of
Radiohead.
They are fantastic. Like they are usually very peaceful, and so they're not this is not that kind of lunatic. It's not. Chesterton wouldn't in fact call them a lunatic. He would call someone a lunatic who was more like the person behind my head right now. The madman in an insane asylum, not a Down syndrome person.
The guy who thinks squirrels are attacking him, or like my.
Well, I think like plotting it.
Yeah, plotting squirrels. Yeah, my grandma used to. She got Alzheimer's, and she thought that she kept thinking she needed to give me money to buy the family medicine. She get these little weird stories in her head, we all have a relative like that, but it's probably something more like that, where somebody starts getting lost in a weird little world that gets created in their mind. All right.
What's interesting.
The madman would read a conspiratorial significance into those empty activities. He would think that the lopping of the grass was an attack on private property. He would think that the kicking of the heels was a signal to an accomplice. If the madman could for an instant become careless, he would become sane. Everyone who has had the misfortune to talk with people in the heart or on the edge of mental disorder knows that their most sinister quality is a horrible clarity of detail, a connecting of one thing with another in a map, more elaborate than a maze. If you argue with a madman, it is extremely probable that you will get the worst of it, for in many ways his mind moves all the quicker for not being delayed by the things that go with good judgment. He is not hampered by a sense of humour or by charity or by the dumb certainties of experience. He is the more logical for losing certain sane affections. Indeed, the common phrase for insanity is in this respect a misleading one. The madman is not the man who has lost his reason. The madman is the man who has lost everything except his reason.
And this is really the key and powerful statement. That there's a kind of madness, which is what he's talking about, where that's all they have is bad. And we had a really good commentator from, should I say his first name? Is it from our Patreon on this?
Oh, sure, yeah.
So Sheldon brought up the fact, and what Sheldon said, the first part that I'm going to read from him is exactly my sentiment about these things. He says, this is how I feel about a lot of the more puerile or puerile conspiracy theories. And he says, especially about the Jews. But how everything fits together is already decided. There's no delay taken to actually size up the situation or experience reality. So you've already pre-decided that something is a certain way, that a certain kind of people are bad, or a certain kind of people are after you, or you're super important in this regard and you have a pivotal role to play in geopolitics, or whatever the case is. And then everything fits, that everything you see, you just automatically force it as a puzzle piece into your wheel. And you don't actually consider things rationally and carefully. You just presume that everything fits into this theory, and there's no delay in thought, and there's no arguing you out of it, because you have this sort of titanic attachment to this one monolithic theory, whatever it is.
Right. And I think that also when you throw a bunch of other stuff out so that you can have so you can fit the universe in your head, or a worldview that all fits, you naturally have to throw a bunch of stuff out. He's going to get into that more here, but it feels like when you debate somebody, for instance, when I try to have a conversation with somebody who definitely believes that gender is a social construct and that marriage is just whatever we want to make it and blah, blah, blah. I'm dealing with the fact that I believe, the world seems created to me. The thing that's strange to me is when I debate with Christians about this, and they have that view, Christians, very left-leaning Christians. Like, how do you have a world created by a God? He clearly created two genders. He must have had intentions. He created them to create children. Like, there's this profound thing there. Like, I'm not saying I know what it is, but I know that there's this profound thing where we're both the same species, but there's something very different about both of us, and it's one of the great mysteries of life. It's like, and we're just going to act like it's meaningless, like it's just an accident. It just happens to be different genitals, and that's it. And we just happen to be able to make kids. Like, it's one of the most profound, fascinating aspects of existence to me, is having two different genders and the ability to procreate and have kids and a family. And there's so many worldviews that just take that whole thing completely for granted. And it's almost impossible to debate that, because they have just thrown that out. And it's just, it's a given, just the way that somebody about the Jews immediately has their whole conspiracy done about the Jews. So you can't even, the moment you say anything about Jewish, anything that has any connection to it, they've already got their mind made up. They just, there's nothing precious there for them. They've already thrown it all out. And I think that's the thing, is like, to try to bring it all in, to bring these mysteries in, and to be okay with, like, I don't know all the answers to this, but like, how can you just throw this out? I think that's, to me, this speaks the most to me about that kind of stuff, because there's those questions and things that I have that lead me to my belief in God, but they don't give me all the answers. I don't have it all worked out in my head, but it shows me why often people that feel like they have it all figured out, they have it all figured out because they've thrown a lot of stuff out.
Right. And when you asked, how could they do that? I was thinking, because I've encountered plenty of people like that. And the conclusion that I've come to, I could definitely be wrong about it, but I think it's true with a lot of them. Whenever people are faced with a kind of unavoidable truth, like Chesterton was talking about this at the beginning of his essay, like sin, the reality of sin, for example, or like you were talking about, the reality of there being two genders, that God clearly created them. And especially if you're having a conversation with a person who's supposed to be Christian and therefore accepts that God created man and woman, male and female,
and
he created them.
Throughout the Bible,
as it says directly in Genesis.
Yeah, and there's all these pictures he uses of the bride of Christ. The church is the bride. Like, there's all these pictures he uses that there's meaning there.
Human sexuality and the differences between the sexes is so core. I mean, God writes a love poem, the Song of Solomon, which is extremely sort of PG-13. And it's based on the love he has for humanity and for his people and his church as the bridegroom of the him as the bridegroom and the church, or his people as the bride. That you can't escape if you're going to take your Christianity seriously, or the idea of God doing something like creating us or writing or having a Bible seriously. You can't escape that. But the people that do, they tend to fall into the camp of they want to deny it because they want to do something different. So it's like scientists, it's like these materialists who they will walk torturous circles with their language in a physics book to talk about how the world, or the biology book, talking about how the world has the appearance of design and things adapted from one thing to another. And as if there's some sort of overarching intelligence that's like, rocks don't adapt, okay? Only intelligent things adapt. It's a reaction to a situation. But they're torturous about this avoidance of a designer in the world. And I see that as the same kind of thing. They seem to have a desire to not want to talk about those uncomfortable truths, because then they might have to, as Chesterton says at one point in another book, they might have the very great trouble of thinking clearly and obeying their creator. And so there's a real sort of denial of reality going on with that, which I think fits well with what he's saying here. I think that's the heart of the maniac, the lunatic.
Yeah, and it does always come down to that they found a lens to look through, and they can't peer out from behind it. And so when you're talking to that person who's stuck on the transgender thing, it's
all through the lens.
A lot of times their lens may be compassion. They have a compassion lens, and they cannot escape having this compassionate thing about everything, but it has to be this compassion thing, and they can't have so they have to twist certain things to fit it. Like if that's their pure thing.
Yep.
He'll get into that. So we should just let Chesterton talk.
Yeah. All right, let's do it.
All right.
The madman's explanation of a thing is always complete, and often in a purely rational sense satisfactory, or to speak more strictly, the insane explanation, if not conclusive, is at least unanswerable. This may be observed especially in the 2 or 3 commonest kinds of madness. If a man says, for instance, that men have a conspiracy against him, you cannot dispute it except by saying that all the men deny that they are conspirators, which is exactly what conspirators would do. His explanation covers the facts as much as yours. Or if a man says that he is the rightful king of England, it is no complete answer to say that the existing authorities call him mad. For if he were king of England, that might be the wisest thing for the existing authorities to do. Or if a man says that he is Jesus Christ, it is no answer to tell him that the world denies his divinity, for the world denied Christ's.
Exactly. I'm just going to keep it going unless you have a thing you definitely want to say.
Yeah. I'll just say one thing, which is I love how he brings it up. Like, that's a joke nowadays. Like, the joke is like, there's a conspiracy. Everyone's against me. And you look around, you're like, but no one says that. We all talk like, we all say we're not. Well, that's exactly what a conspirator would say, isn't it?
Right.
Like, it's that disorder, that myopic view which almost can't be disproven because it's covered itself and everything's a conspiracy against it.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, he is wrong. But if we attempt to trace his error in exact terms, we shall not find it quite so easy as we had supposed. Perhaps the nearest we can get to expressing it is to say this, that his mind moves in a perfect but narrow circle. A small circle is quite as infinite as a large circle, but though it is quite as infinite, it is not so large. In the same way, the insane explanation is quite as complete as the sane one, but it's not so large. A bullet is quite as round as the world, but it is not the world. There is such a thing as a narrow universality. There is such a thing as a small and cramped eternity. You may see it in many modern religions. Now, speaking quite externally and empirically, we may say that the strongest and most unmistakable mark of madness is this combination between a logical completeness and a spiritual contraction. The lunatic's theory explains a large number of things, but it does not explain them in a large way. I mean that if you or I were dealing with a mind that was growing morbid, we should be chiefly concerned not so much to give it arguments as to give it air, to convince it that there was something cleaner and cooler outside the suffocation of a single argument.
Yes, and here it is. So if you've been following the podcast, we've got Chesterton's fence, Chesterton's chimney, Chesterton's lamppost. Now you got Chesterton's Maniac circle, which is one of my... These are the illustrations that stick with me.
Right.
That just because somebody's logical reason, it comes in a complete circle. I think a lot of people, especially if you're kind of naive, think, oh man, it all fits together in a perfect circle. That can't argue with that. And he points out that a circle can be any size. It can be the size of the universe or the size of a bullet. And he says you'll notice a lot of these people, they have all this logic. It all fits together, but your logic can be as simple as whatever. It's we're all just pixels in a video game or something, and some simple explanation can be perfectly fit a perfect circle of logic.
Right. And then I love the way he answers that argument, or even a lunacy, not by trying to break apart its premises from logic, but by fulfilling his promise. He told us in the beginning of this book that it was going to be a series of pictures, and here's the first picture. Like you said, the picture is the small circle of the mind of small men who have small theories that are supposed to explain everything. And so, like you said, the solution is give it air. Recognize, try to do something and get them to recognize how small their circle is, which he's going to go into in a very more specific way in the next paragraph or two.
All right, so this is our final paragraph, but it'll be broken up into two pieces because it's long.
Suppose, for instance, it were the first case that I took as typical. Suppose it were the case of a man who accused everybody of conspiring against him. If we could express our deepest feelings of protest and appeal against this obsession, I suppose we should say something like this. Oh, I admit that you have your case and have it by heart, and that many things do fit into other things, as you say. I admit that your explanation explains a great deal, but what a great deal it leaves out. Are there no other stories in the world except yours? And are all men busy with your business? Suppose we grant the details. Perhaps when the man in the street did not seem to see you, it was only his cunning. Perhaps when the policeman asked you your name, it was only because he knew it already. But how much happier you would be if you only knew that these people cared nothing about you. How much larger your life would be if yourself could become smaller in it. If you could really look at other men with common curiosity and pleasure. If you could see them walking as they are in their sunny selfishness and their virile indifference, you would begin to be interested in them because they were not interested in you. You would break out of this tiny and tawdry theatre in which your own little plot is always being played, and you would find yourself under a freer sky in a street full of splendid strangers.
Sounds like a song title, A Street Full of Splendid Strangers. I will note, I keep him in. I could go back and do new takes, but when he does these weird little pauses, I kind of like hearing the AI try to act. And it's really trying to imitate the AI, the original file, because Chesterton did a lot of those. If you listen to the original file, there's a lot of
does he do the slow down pause and then
yeah, he really does like
speaks.
a wind down, and he winds up and then kind of like talks faster in it, but then he's really, it's like a
nice
waterbed or a lot of it's toned down, but it's trying to retain some of it because you can kind of play with the settings. Anyway,
that's cool. Well, this is a fantastic. We're gonna do one more paragraph, right? Or are we not? Are we?
It's the other half of this paragraph, so it's
right.
the rest of his arguments to these different arguments.
I mean, this is brilliant. I don't know what you think, but I love the fact that when I'm sitting in an airport, I know that almost nobody cares about me. Like I love watching people go by and live their life and do the thing. It's beautiful. It's so fascinating to me that everybody else has a world just like mine. I have a world full of troubles and joys and people, ideas and beauty and ugliness and things that have happened. And everybody else has got one of those too. It's different from mine.
Yeah.
Sometimes ours overlap a little, but it's just a beautiful idea and thought and reality. And what a torturous thing it would be to be trapped into one idea where everyone's obsessed with you, which is a very, as Chesterton points out, it's a very common thing with lunatics and conspiracy theorists. Is they do believe that they're kind of like at the center of the world, that everyone's concerned with them.
That's probably also why a lot of, especially child stars, but people, a lot of big celebrities become real weirdos.
Yeah, you might be right.
Because they live that life. I mean, that's their life. Everyone is obsessed with them. I mean, probably actually not as bad as you'd think, but they would think, but it seems like, because if you're in the middle of a success, I learned this through when Axe Cop happened to me. From the worldwide perspective, you may have heard of some guy who made a webcomic that went viral. But if you're living in my life, it feels like the whole world knows about it. It feels like when you're on the street, you keep hearing people say your name. Because it's happening often enough that so many people are walking up to you and being like, "You're that X-Cop guy, right?" Like it happened where it was such a thing that it felt like, and I can't imagine if you actually are like at the level of shoes of like a Michael Jackson or Britney Spears.
Right. Exactly.
You go mad.
Exactly.
I don't know how you don't go mad in that situation. If you want to have some normal life, you don't get to walk around and run your fingers through the grass.
At least be warped. I remember hearing for the first time, and I thought of this chapter because I had read Orthodoxy. But when I heard the fact that LeBron James has this massive tattoo across his back that says "The Chosen One," and you realize that he's just been surrounded since his high school days with hordes of people that just tell him how wonderful and awesome he is and basically treat him like you're saying, like the center of the universe. And so it happens in entertainment and sports and politics and even smaller spheres like I remember I've been a comic book fan since I was a kid. Collected comics. I got like 30 boxes of them in my garage. And I remember the Axe Cop coming out, and I thought it was really cool because it was so weird and imaginative. Never thought I would ever meet the guy that did it, but it was kind of a cool comic. But like you're saying, even a small success from a world's perspective, a small success like that can make us turn myopic and think about how treat life like everything's revolving around us. And,
it feels it feels that way.
Should we do the last paragraph?
Yep, let's take it home here.
Or suppose it were the second case of madness, that of a man who claims the crown, your impulse would be to answer, "All right, perhaps you know that you are the King of England, but why do you care? Make one magnificent effort, and you will be a human being and look down on all the kings of the earth." Or it might be the third case of the madman who called himself Christ. If we said what we felt, we should say, "So you are the creator and redeemer of the world." But what a small world it must be. What a little heaven you must inhabit, with angels no bigger than butterflies. How sad it must be to be God, and an inadequate God. Is there really no life fuller and no love more marvellous than yours? And is it really in your small and painful pity that all flesh must put its faith? How much happier you would be, how much more of you there would be, if the hammer of a higher God could smash your small cosmos, scattering the stars like spangles, and leave you in the open, free like other men, to look up as well as down.
That's awesome. It's
Right.
What a small world.
And I think one thing I never quite put together is he's saying these things, whether or not they convince the person to change their mind. If you're talking to a madman, chances are they're not gonna. But it is rather than stepping into their little circle and arguing within their logic, you stand outside of it. And you basically say, like, I'm not going to enter into that little world you're living in because I live out here where it's big and broad and there's mystery and it's not all figured out. And I get to have one, I get to look up as well as down.
But I am going to compare your small world with the one that I see.
Yes. Yeah. So I compare it and I'll go, this is why I'm choosing mine over yours. Like, it's a comparison. I think that's interesting because I never thought of it, realized that's what he's doing here. Because I tend to think so much like we're just trained to think like, how is this a great argument? I'm imagining him replying in Twitter to this guy and like, this isn't really a takedown. I don't know if this is a takedown or not.
But it isn't. But it's better than a takedown because
he's not trying to own him.
He's not trying to own him. He's trying to put everything in perspective. He's saying, let's take a look here from a angle of perspective. And that's a much better thing to do than to try to own someone. Yeah.
I was watching a video of an atheist who talked about how he had this perspective. An atheist became a Christian. And he had this challenge for everybody, like, explain how you know that. Explain how you know that. And he would no one could ever, any religious person he talked to, they could never get down to a certain point. And they couldn't explain how they know that.
2-year-old why thing. Why?
Right.
Why?
Well, that's what he said.
Yeah.
He said that's what he did. And then he said one day he was really about math and science. And then one day he was reading his advanced math book. It was like, trigonometry or some math that's crazy to me that I didn't get past Algebra 1. But there's a section in there that basically says these are the axioms you have to accept for math to be accepted. That there are, and there's a list of like 30 axioms or something that. And axioms are just a thing that we accept to be true, but we don't actually have any proof that they are true.
Correct.
So even mathematicians and scientists have to have a bunch of stuff they can't explain how they know that or how they just have to go. We have to accept that there's a logic in the universe we don't know why there is. Like, there's certain axioms like that, and so everybody has to. And that kind of broke his circle, his little madman circle he was in because he had that his model,
right. Yeah, because the thing he respected the most, it turns out, had to have first principles that he just accepted. I remember when we were reading the father of of all geometry, Euclid, when I was in college, and he has 5 of these axioms at the beginning for geometry, and the first one is a point is that which has no part, and we sat and debated about that for like 3 classes. Like, what the hell? How do you? What does that mean? How do you know that? Can we really just rely on that as an axiom that we take for granted? Is there no way to prove this? Blah blah blah. But it turns out even our most basic science and math relies upon truths that we have to simply accept. We have to perceive them and say, "Yep, that's true." Can't give you a logical argument. We just know it's true. And those axioms are critical to all the sciences.
Well, we will continue on. We're about halfway through the Maniac. I think it's just 4 parts, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And it's fun. I love this chapter. It's in my book. This is one of the ones that we skipped from my book because I wanted to read it in the context of the whole book. So.
Well, as a teaser, I'll just say at the very end here, what is going to be very interesting is what this has to do with the Apostolic Creed that he claimed that his whole book was written in defense of. Because this is an odd way to go about defending your Christian faith to come at materialists and lunatics. Or determinists and lunatics, I should say. So anyway.
Chesterton's Gateway is produced by Ethan Nicolle and Michael Grumbine. It is based on the book of the same name, which can be found on that capitalist monstrosity Amazon.com. Send questions and comments to Chesterton's Gateway at gmail.com. And join us on Patreon, where only the true Chestertonians can be found. Goodbye.
All right, goodbye, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Join us on Patreon. Become part of the community.
Add to the notes.
Add to the notes. And you'll be like Sheldon. You'll get a mention. All right.
Take care.
For I stuff away for life, shoving peas in with a